Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I've had a few questions about some functions in Excel, and that's why I made this little video in order to show you how you use some of the standard functions that a few people have issues with. As you can see here, here's my Excel sheet, and what I'm going to go through is the use of the sum, sumif, vlookup, column width, and define name functions. So here you can see a list of products and their associated sales volumes. You can see the products and their associated prices down here. But you see there's data missing on price, revenue, profits for each single sales, and then for the sales for the different types of products. So the first thing that we're going to take a look at is how we can see everything in a cell, which means, for instance, this cell in C2, you can't really see all the text. So how do you adjust that? The standard way to do it is basically that you click on the column and then you adjust the width. The standard way to do it is to go to the home bottom, which you can see I'm in here. I look at the area for that's called cells, which is this one. And here we have a format bottom, and then we have a column width, and then I can specify the column width. Or in this case, I could change it to 12. And you can see now I can see all the whole text. There's also a quick way to do that, which is when you click on the column, and then basically you drag and drop the column width, so you can also scale it like that. But through the menu bar is the standard by the book method. Now let's take a look at how do we input the prices for each of these products. You know the product price from down here. You just have to split them up. So a way to do that is to use a formula that's called vlookup. You can see an example here on the right side, but I'll walk you through how you actually set the vlookup formula up. So in this case, I can look into formulas, I can insert function, and then I can find it here. So in case, it shows you the mostly used formulas that you do, or the ones you've used the last. And here you can see I've already played around with vlookup, so I found it in my list here. So I basically open it up, then it opens up and asks me, all right, so what am I going to look at? So first of all, I'm going to look up what is the price for alpha. So I put in B3. The table I need to look up this up into will be the table down here. So that's where it comes from. So that's what I put in as the table array. The column number that I need to return this with, so I need a price, and that is in column number 2 in this little table down here. So I put in a 2. And then in terms of the range lookup, it's basically whether I want something that is exactly spelled the same way or similar. In this case, it is exactly the same. So I would put in true, or I would put in false, sorry. And you can see down here, the explanation here, if you want to find an exact match, you have to put in false. And then I press OK, and then it returns the right price. Now, the problem then arises if I want to make sure that I get all the prices for everything, so I can just copy them down. You can see I grabbed that little green box here on this side and drag it down. However, when I do that with this formula, it doesn't work. It works for the next one, but then something happens here. So there's something wrong with the formula. So let's take a look at this formula. Now, when I look at this formula, I can see that there's no dollar signs anywhere. So when I copy it, all these things will move, depends if I copy it down or copy it to the right or to the left. So I have to lock some of these formula parts so they don't move when I copy it down, right? So when I go down to this one and look at the wrong formula, it takes beta, but you see it has moved the table that I'm looking at. So it's moved that down. You can see that red area. So right now it doesn't include alpha, only beta and gamma, right? And if we take a look at some of the other formulas here where it's all wrong, you can see it's moved everything down. So it's basically the table array that I have an issue with. In order to fix that, I can actually either put in the dollar signs, as you probably have seen, or the easier way is actually to name this table. So what I do here is that I mark out the table that I want to give a name, and then I go in and define the name by going to the formulas menu bar. I go to define a name, and then I give this one, which is a price list, a title price list. Right, so now I see type price list. So now I have price list for this one. Now, when I then go back into my formula here, and here and try to correct it. So instead of putting in this table array, I could put in the name price list. You can see this one comes here because it's been a named range. So I can basically click on that. And now I've named the list. Now look at what happens now. So if I now copy everything down here, all of it is kosher. You can see that it put in the right formula when I did the copy of the formula. So you can see if I go down here, it's only the beat that changes, but not the price list. So that's the advantages of having a defined name with a table like that. Now, if I want to do a revenue calculation, it's pretty straightforward. In this one, I basically look at the sales volume and I multiply that with the price. In this case, I might want to format this one. So let's say I want this in dollar or currency. So I go in my menu bar under number and I select the relevant ones. I have two different options. I can either go in here to select one, or I can go in directly on this one to select the currency. So in this case, let me just say that that's for what discussion, this is in euros. So I choose euro for this one. Now you can see that the number here now changed to a number of numbers, and that's a big issue because then there's something wrong with this formula. However, it can be hard to figure out what it is. In this case, when I scroll over it, it actually shows me the value. So it looks like it's doing it okay, but it's just not showing it. So this is a clear sign that the column width is not big enough. There's an automated way to make it big enough. And so you could either go the manual way I showed you before, or basically you can double click on this one, and then it moves it out so it can be there. So that's what I did here. So now I can see it. So if again, you get these number signs, typically that's a sign that the column width is not wide enough. All right, so now I have this formula. It has volume times price, and I can copy this all the way down. When you copy it all the way down here, there's an option box here of specifying what you want to copy. So right now I'm copying everything, but I don't want the formatting because then my line around the box here disappears. So I use fill without formatting. If I do that, you can then see that, oh, my currency disappeared. If I don't want that, I can go back in here and I can do another type of fill. So I can do fill formatting only. I could go back to copy the cells. So there are different types of options. In this case, let's just stay with the formula. I'll just put in my line here again, and there you have it. Now, in terms of profitability, in order to calculate that, of course, we need to have some cost associated with it. So in order to calculate profitability, we would have to add a column with the product costs. And in order to do so, it's pretty simple. So the easy way to do it is to mark the column before which you want another column. In this case, I just put it on F, I press insert, and then you can see another column appears that has similar formatting as the one I just had. So let's put in the cost. Now, in terms of the cost, you'll have to find that from somewhere because it is not given in this one. But let's say the standard production cost for any type of product will be about $750 per piece. So let's put $750 in this one, and we can copy this down again. Again, we have an issue with the border, so I will put on a new border. And there you have the cost. And then the profitability is then a simple thing of actually just making sure that we have the revenue and we detract the cost. In this case, we have the cost per unit, and we have to multiply that with the sales volume. And there you go. Then you have a formula that actually shows you the total revenue. This is the cost, let's specify that, per product. And then you have the profit here, right? And then we can again extend that all the way down. Again, you see we have the same issue here. I adjust the width, I put on a new border, and then we have the profitability here. If you have a column here that has some content that you don't need, in this case, it's formatted with green. I don't want it outside these boxes. I can basically go into the font area. You can see I have the cell color here. I go in and, oh, it's green. I just want it to be no fill. So I press no fill, and then it moves away. So now the next job is to try to figure out what is the total revenue for the alpha product. And for this task, we need to use the sumif formula. So basically, sum it if it lists the alpha, which is on the top here in the yellow column. So let's put in a formula. We will say formulas, insert function, and I'm going to look for countif or sumif. And there we go, sumif. I'm going to use the little help bottom here, function arguments. So I'm looking at the range. And in this case, we are looking at the range that will have the references that we are going to be looking for, which is basically, we need the revenue. So we need all the way out here. All right, so we need the criteria. If it needs what criteria? Well, wait a minute. Oh, that's the wrong one, because this one, we specified the full table. And in this case, we don't want the full table. We just want to know what it needs to check. So in this case, we want to check this range. So it checks the product names, and it checks it for what criteria? Well, it checks it for this criteria because it's got to be equal to that one. And then I pressed return, and I got there too early. So you can see that the sumif is not correct yet, because it also has to specify the last argument. So this one is not right because I pressed return too early. So let's start over and try to do it one more time. So I put in my function, sumif. The range was the product range. The criteria was the product that I'm looking for. And then I needed the sum range. You can see that was not in the original one. So we need to put in the sum range. So basically the sum range would be the revenue range, right? So the sum would be from here. And we press OK. And then we get the number for the alpha one. Now the question then becomes, when we move this one down and copy it down, what happens with the original formula? As you know, we haven't locked any cells, so we will have an issue with the product range and the revenue range. So we need to lock those formulas, right? So there are a couple of different ways to do it. The other, I showed you the naming before. And then let's just look at putting in the lock keys, and in this case, it's basically the dollar signs. So I put in the dollar signs for the ranges here. So the range, so the product name range doesn't change. I also do not want the revenue range to change, so I also put in the lock formulas for that. And I'm just doing it manually, as you can see. So now we've locked the blue range and the purple range. The only thing that's going to move is then the B16. B16 is the product name in the overview list here. So basically, this formula is now done. We then probably want to have the revenue in dollars. So let me put up the currency amount. And again, you see we have an issue with not showing the data. So I mark out the column, double click it, so it moves out so we can see it. And then we are ready to copy this one down to the other cells. In this case, you can see it includes the lines as well, and I don't want that. So in this case, I'm just going to copy a fill without the formula. And then I will go in and then add the currency manually like this. So now we have the revenue for each of the different products instead of having to calculate that and do it manually. Now we can, of course, do the same thing for the profitability. So in this case, if you wanted to put it over here, you can basically drag out the formula. And in this case, we also just want to make sure that the formula is correct. So I walk in here to see what it is looking at. In this case, it's actually moving the C16, which is not correct. It still needs to look up the product name. So what I do here when I see the formula, I can see the C16. I can actually just move the red box over to where I need it to be, right? So now you can see if I press return and look at the formula, it has actually moved over the box here to B16, right? So you see this one, so you see this one, and this one is then the same. There is another way to do it from the original formula. So if you know that you're going to move the revenue formula here in D16, one to the right, you can also lock that part of this cell identification. So it moves, when it moves from one column to the next, we can actually just lock the column by a $sign, which I do now. And then when I copy this one, it will copy over without moving it. So you can see I get the same number here. So now this formula is almost done. You can then see it, there's an error here because the revenue and profit can't be the same. So there's something wrong with the formula. Let's take a look at it. Ooh, that's right. I haven't moved the revenue over to identify the profitability. So again, I do it in this function. So I basically look at this one. I can move it over with the purple to the profit. I press return, and now I have the profit for the alpha product. And then I can basically just copy that down. Again, I make sure I do it without formatting, so it doesn't change the formatting. I put in my dollar mark, and I can see I need a little box line around it. So I put in the box line, and there you go. Now, if you now wanted the total profitability for the old products, we can then say total. Let's add that line. And we basically add a simple sum function. Simple sum function is found in the menu bar under editing. It's one of the normal ones. You can see here some of the standard ones. I use the sum function from here. It shows me what it's going to sum, and I basically press return. I can then use that formula, extend that to the right, and then I have my profitability as well as the revenue per for the whole company. So this is an example of how you use sumif, vlookup, column width, define name, and how it becomes relevant once you're juggling around with handling a data sheet like this about sales and profits and revenue for a company. Hope this little walkthrough was interesting and relevant for you. And if you had questions about these functions, it also shows you how you do the different things. So thanks for here, and I will see you in class.